Tonight, several developing stories as we come on the air. In the race for the White House, both campaigns now laser focused on must-win Pennsylvania. Hurricane Ernesto causing trouble up and down the East Coast, and sources say former Congressman George Santos is expected to plead guilty. First, the presidential race. The spotlight tonight on Pennsylvania, with new polls showing a dead heat in that crucial battleground state. Former President Trump making his case to voters today. Vice President Harris also headed there ahead of the Democratic convention. And what we've learned about President Biden's role as the party gathers for the DNC. Also tonight, Ernesto slams into Bermuda, a direct hit by the Category 1 hurricane. Power now out in much of the island. The storm causing dangerous rip currents up and down the eastern seaboard. At least 2 deaths reported. The waves washing away this home in North Carolina. And more severe weather is on the way in the east. Our weather team timing it all out. Sources telling ABC News that George Santos is expected to plead guilty. The disgraced former congressman is facing a trial next month on 23 felony charges, including defrauding donors and lying about his finances. Shots fired at a U.S. military base in Texas. Air Force security guards coming under attack and returning fire overnight. The new details just coming in. Pressure mounting for a ceasefire deal in Gaza. The Secretary of State heading to the region for a final push as Israel continues to press the fight in Gaza. More than a dozen members of the same family killed in a single airstrike. A massive fire at a London landmark housing precious works of art by Monet and Van Gogh. More than 100 firefighters battling the flames for hours. Frightening images allegedly showing an attempted child abduction. How Good Samaritans stopped it, along with another alleged attack. A suspect now facing charges, according to police. The big real estate shakeup. How new rules taking effect today could impact buyers and sellers. And America Strong, an athlete who's overcome so much, heads off to compete in Paris, and the whole town turns out to wish her luck.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us on this Saturday. I'm Mary Bruce in for Whit Johnson. We are tracking several developing stories as we come on the air tonight as the race for the White House is now intensifying. Both campaigns turning their attention to the must-win state of Pennsylvania. Former President Trump is there tonight. Vice President Harris and Governor Walz are there tomorrow, as new polling shows Harris surging in other critical battlegrounds, states that President Biden was trailing in before he dropped out. And tonight, what we are learning about the role the president will play in the Democratic National Convention in just 2 days. The other major story tonight, Hurricane Ernesto, our team covering it all. The impacts felt up and down the East Coast. Waves reaching 8 feet, crashing into beaches. This home in North Carolina toppled. But we begin with the presidential contest. ABC's MaryAlice Parks leading us off from Washington.
Tonight, Donald Trump campaigning in Pennsylvania, almost immediately attacking his opponent, Kamala Harris.
Most radical left person ever to run for office. This is not what this country needs. We've had enough of them.
Blaming the vice president and the Biden administration for inflation. Trump supporters conceding Vice President Kamala Harris brings a new dynamic to the race.
She has youth and vitality on her side versus Biden.
But saying Trump should focus less on personal attacks.
Enough with that. Let's talk about, the facts of what's going on in the country, the issues.
The Democratic vice presidential candidate, Tim Walz, in Nebraska today.
Feels pretty good to be back home.
The state where he grew up, went to college, and met his wife before becoming the governor of Minnesota.
If you're an old school libertarian Republican Nebraskan, this is the ticket for you. This is the ticket for you.
He understands the plight of the middle class, and he's going to do a lot for us.
Harris and Walz headed into their convention next week with strong momentum in crucial swing states. In Arizona, Harris leading former President Trump among likely voters 50-45, a stunning 15-point rise from when Biden topped the ticket. And in Nevada, Harris 1 point behind Trump compared to Biden's 14-point deficit in May. President Biden set to kick off the Democratic Party's convention with a primetime speech Monday night, formally turning over the event and the party to his vice president. Biden's team arguing he should get credit for endorsing Harris immediately after he dropped out. saying his confidence in her helped Democrats avoid a mess and stay united.
All eyes will be on the president on that stage Monday night. MaryAlice Parks joins us now from Washington. And MaryAlice, we are learning more about how Democrats plan to honor Biden at their convention.
Yeah, that's right, Mary. This was, of course, supposed to be his convention, and it is a delicate and unique challenge for Democrats to both honor him and acknowledge for voters just how quickly everything in this race changed. We know the president and the first lady will be speaking Monday night, and his team says there will be nods to the president, big and small, throughout the week, including, we know, some of his hallmark quotes that will be highlighted throughout the convention site. Mary? A busy week ahead. MaryAlice, thank you. And ABC News will cover the Democratic National Convention in Chicago next week, beginning Monday in prime time, streaming on ABC News Live at 7 p.m. Eastern, and then here on the network at 10 p.m. Monday night. And tune into a special edition of This Week tomorrow morning. Martha Raddatz is at the DNC in Chicago, and will speak to Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth and Mayor Brandon Johnson before the convention kicks off on Monday. Now to our other major headline tonight, Hurricane Ernesto battering Bermuda. Strong winds knocking down trees and power lines, more than a half foot of rain falling. And officials are warning of the potential for life-threatening flooding. ABC's Morgan Norwood is in Bermuda.
Tonight, Ernesto making landfall in Bermuda as a Category 1 hurricane, slamming the island with 85-mile-an-hour winds. Branches, leaves, and chunks of debris scattered by that raging storm, knocking out power on the island. Local government officials telling residents to stay off the streets.
I can't emphasize, if you do not have to be on the road, please do not travel.
The slow-moving storm turning over Bermuda, hundreds of miles from the East Coast. The island under a shelter-in-place order. Hurricane Ernesto dumping several inches of rain. This parking lot overwhelmed by water, debris, buckets floating around. Flash flooding now the main concern as the storm creeps over the island. Despite the distance, the East Coast seeing backlash from Hurricane Ernesto. Life-threatening rip current warnings from Florida all the way up to Maine. In New York, beaches also closed as precaution. And along the Outer Banks of North Carolina, this home washed away by ferocious waves. Others at risk there, according to local officials. Some areas seeing waves of up to 8 feet. And Mary, officials say 2 people drowned off of South Carolina's coast in that rough surf, separate incidents, and certainly seeing our fair share of that here in Bermuda, but also seeing a number of power outages. Close to 70% of the island without power. And look, with winds like this, 60-mile-per-hour winds, it could be some time before crews are able to safely get the lights back on. Mary?
Morgan Norwood riding out the storm for us there in Bermuda. Morgan, thank you. Let's bring in ABC News meteorologist Somara Theodore. So, Somara, we're seeing the impact of Ernesto here on the East Coast. How long is that going to last?
Well, Mary, the rip current threat is sticking around through at least Monday. Let's go ahead and see what Ernesto is going to do next. So it's pulling away from the island of Bermuda, awfully slow at about 7 miles per hour to the north-northeast. It continues as a Cat 1 storm, passing Newfoundland as it continues to diminish in strength. But you can see the eastern seaboard lit up in red as we do have that risk for rip current threats. Now, the storms that we've been seeing on the East Coast, that cold front is actually kind of helping keep Ernesto away from us, but it's also prompting more severe weather as we head through your Sunday from the southeast up the I-95 corridor. And we're also dealing with the scorching heat. This area is highlighted in hot pink from Oklahoma City to New Orleans. Under an excessive heat warning, could feel like 115 degrees. Mary?
115, hard to believe. Samara, thank you. Sources tell ABC News embattled former Congressman George Santos is expected to agree to a plea deal in his federal fraud trial. Santos faces 23 felony counts. A guilty plea would avoid a trial, which is set to begin next month. 2 of his former associates have already pleaded guilty. And ABC News senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katursky has the details.
For months, disgraced former Republican Congressman George Santos has insisted he's innocent and vowed to fight criminal charges. But tonight, sources familiar with his case tell ABC News Santos is instead expected to plead guilty. Santos, just the 6th member expelled from the House of Representatives, had just reaffirmed his not guilty plea to 23 financial crimes in a hearing Tuesday. But on Friday, his attorneys and federal prosecutors asked a judge on Long Island to schedule another hearing without saying why. Our sources say Santos now wants to plead guilty, though they caution the erratic ex-congressman could always change his mind. Santos himself admitted he lied to voters about nearly every part of his biography, from where he went to school to claims his grandparents fled the Holocaust. But the federal charges mainly involve money, allegations including lying to Congress about his wealth, defrauding donors, and using campaign funds for personal expenses.
It's not yet clear, Mary, which charges Santos will be pleading guilty to or what the sentence could be, but he will be in federal court on Monday here on Long Island, and this expected guilty plea coming just weeks before the start of his trial. Mary?
We know you'll be watching it all closely, Aaron. Thank you. An investigation is underway at Joint Base San Antonio after shots were fired at the base's guards in the early morning hours. The guards returned fire. Officials say there were multiple shooters who fired from a vehicle. The gate to the compound was closed for a time. And overseas now, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is heading back to Israel amid hopes that a ceasefire deal is finally within reach. But overnight, an Israeli airstrike inside Gaza killed at least 18 people, many from the same family. This as Hezbollah fired rockets into southern Israel. ABC's Soufi Burridge joins us now from Tel Aviv. And Tom, all eyes are now on whether this ceasefire deal can finally get across the finish line.
That's right, Mary. Tonight, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu saying his negotiating team has expressed, quote, cautious optimism about the possibility of reaching a ceasefire deal with Hamas. It comes after an Israeli airstrike killed 15 members of one family in central Gaza, according to Gaza's Hamas-run civil defense. The IDF saying that strike is under review. Tonight, protesters calling for a ceasefire on the streets of Tel Aviv, as we learn from an Israeli official that Israeli negotiators are still in Doha for further discussions. Netanyahu due to meet with his negotiating team tomorrow, and then an Israeli delegation should head to Egypt for the next key stage in this process. Those talks coming at a volatile moment in the Middle East. Tonight, the IDF saying it launched an airstrike on an armed terrorist cell in the city of Jenin in the occupied West Bank. President Biden warning all players in this region not to do anything that could undermine those Gaza ceasefire talks. Mary?
And the president saying they are closer than they've ever been to getting this deal done. Tom, thank you. Staying overseas now, Ukraine's President Zelensky says his troops are strengthening their positions inside Russia nearly 2 weeks into their surprise assault. Ukrainian forces posted these images of a bridge they claim to have blown up, cutting off several villages in western Russia. ABC's Britt Clennett has the latest from London.
Tonight, new video showing the moment Ukrainian forces hit and destroy a strategic bridge in Russia's Kursk region, cutting off a local district, hampering Russia's ability to supply its troops in the area as Ukraine pushes deeper into Russian territory nearly 2 weeks since its surprise cross-border offensive caught the Kremlin off guard. President Zelensky in a video message tonight calling on the United States and other allies to provide long-range weapons.
Zelensky's warning that if he were given full reign to strike legitimate military targets inside Russia, he could shorten the war, and now is the time, while Ukraine has some tactical advantage.
Zelensky saying Ukrainian troops are strengthening positions in the captured territory. Kyiv claiming to have taken more than 100 Russian prisoners. Drone footage from the Ukrainian military appearing to show several men in military uniforms surrendering before being taken back to Ukraine blindfolded. Zelensky earlier calling the captured land an exchange fund, implying the territory could be traded for Ukrainian regions occupied by Russia. But a Washington Post report saying the attack has derailed plans to hold indirect talks in Qatar on ending Russia's strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure.
Tonight, Mary, Ukraine saying talks in Doha were planned, but claiming they've been postponed due to the situation in the Middle East, saying that they will take place in video conference format next Thursday. Mary?
Britt, thank you. In London today, a major fire broke out at an historic arts venue. More than 125 firefighters battled the blaze at Somerset House for several hours. The centuries-old building houses priceless works by Monet and Van Gogh. Officials, though, say the artworks were not in the area of the fire and no one was hurt. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Back here at home, new real estate commission rules are going into effect this weekend, and they are expected to change the game for both buyers and sellers, leaving more room, especially for sellers, to negotiate. ABC's Elizabeth Schulze breaks it all down.
Tonight, sweeping new rules are in effect nationwide in the real estate industry, upending how Americans buy and sell their homes. The changes stem from a blockbuster settlement in March with the powerful National Association of Realtors over broker commissions.
And there will be transparency added to what is typically the largest single financial transaction of a person's life.
Starting today, home buyers will have to sign a written agreement with their realtor, spelling out their compensation before they go on any home tour. Brian and Choma Chukwu-Smith signed an agreement with their broker before touring homes in St. Louis.
It definitely added a little bit more commitment to the process.
The changes mean sellers could end up with more money in their pockets. Typically, sellers would pay 5 to 6% commission on a home sale, split between their agent and the buyer's agent. For a $400,000 home, that can mean $24,000 in fees. Now, it could be easier for sellers to negotiate those fees lower or not to pay the buyer's commission at all.
People are going to know what they're paying for a bit better, and they're going to be happier with the overall service that they're getting.
Homebuyers are also getting relief with mortgage rates now at the lowest level in more than a year. They are expected to dip further as the Federal Reserve cuts interest rates, likely as soon as September. Mary?
Elizabeth, thank you. And there is still much more ahead here on World News Tonight. This Saturday, dozens were hurt when a Ferris wheel caught fire overseas, and an alleged kidnapping attempt caught on video. How a good Samaritan saved the day. Next tonight, police in Michigan say 2 child abductions just an hour apart were thwarted by Good Samaritans. Security video shows a man grabbing a 7-year-old girl off her bicycle in Sterling Heights on Tuesday and driving off. Her aunt and young cousin suffered injuries while trying to stop him. A bystander pulled the suspect out of the car and held him for police. Police say the same man is also suspected of trying to kidnap a 15-year-old girl earlier that day. 23-year-old Endi Bala was arrested and faces multiple charges, including kidnapping. Tonight, more than 24 people were hurt in Germany when a fire broke out on a Ferris wheel. 2 of the gondolas going up in flames. This happened at a festival in Leipzig. Reports from the scene say at least 2 of the injuries were severe. The cause of the fire is under investigation. And when we come back, the major recall involving tons of frozen chicken nuggets. To the index now, and a major recall. The Department of Agriculture says 167,000 pounds of Perdue chicken products are being recalled because they could contain small pieces of metal. The recalled products are 22-ounce packages of Simply Smart Organics breaded chicken breast nuggets, 29-ounce packages of chicken breast tenders, and 22-ounce packages of Butcher Box organic nuggets. They have a best if used by date of March 23rd, 2025. Check those used by dates. And country star Keith Urban chose an unusual venue for his latest concert. His pop-up concert was in the parking lot of a Buc-ee's in Athens, Alabama. Urban posted details online just a few hours before the show and expected a few hundred fans, but more than 5,000 showed up, according to city officials. That's a popular Buc-ee's. And when we come back, America Strong, the hometown hero who refused to quit. And finally tonight, America Strong, a swimmer's unexpected journey. Allie Truitt has always loved the water. A competitive swimmer in college, she celebrated her graduation last year with a trip to Turks and Caicos. It was there, swimming in the ocean with a friend, that she encountered a shark.
We fought back, but pretty quickly the shark had my leg in its mouth, and the next thing I knew, it had bitten off my foot and part of my leg.
Days later, on her 23rd birthday, she underwent a below-knee amputation of her left leg.
I have to learn how to sit again and stand again and walk again and run.
And regaining her passion for the water.
The first time I got back in was in July, a year ago. I got back in with a floaty around my stomach.
Her perseverance and hard work paying off. One stroke at a time, regaining the confidence and strength to compete again. Less than a year after she first got back in the water, Allie qualifying for a spot on Team USA's Paralympic swim team.
I really early on wanted to send myself the message that what happened to me was not going to stop me from doing things I love.
Yesterday, Allie's proud hometown community packing downtown Darien, Connecticut. Cheering her on as she heads to Paris.
I cannot believe this many people just showed up and took time out of their morning to be here.
Grateful for the love and support that helped her get to this remarkable moment.
We are so much stronger than we think. We have so much more in us than we think.
And she is strong indeed. Go Allie. Thank you for watching. I'm Mary Bruce. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.